What happens when a global superstar known for her unapologetic individuality is pushed one question too far, live on national television? Before we dive into this explosive moment between Lady Gaga and Whoopi Goldberg on The View, make sure you subscribe to Talk Flair, hit that like button, and drop a comment to support these dramatic deep dive stories we bring you every day. Now, let's step into the moment everything changed. The cameras had barely settled before the tension started to vibrate under the studio lights. Lady Gaga sat at the center of the panel, dressed in a sharp black suit embroidered with metallic threads that shimmered like armor. Her platinum hair was slicked back behind her ears, revealing eyes that looked awake, alert, almost wary. She knew what she was walking into. She always did. But this time, something in the air felt different. The audience erupted with applause as Whoopi leaned forward, smiling with that warm but probing energy she had perfected over decades. "Hey, Gaga," she said, her voice low and steady. "You've been in the headlines a lot lately. People are talking. People have opinions. So let's get into it." Gaga's jaw tightened ever so slightly, almost invisible unless you were watching closely. Joy Behar shot her a sympathetic glance, the kind that said, "Brace yourself." Sunny Hostin adjusted her cards. Sarah Haynes swiveled slightly, sensing the storm brewing. "Look," Gaga began, crossing one leg over the other, projecting control even as the edges of her composure frayed. "I'm here because I want people to hear the truth from me, not from someone who doesn't know my life." The audience hummed in anticipation. Whoopi set her card down. "Fair enough," she said. "But you've always been very open about your struggles, fame, pressure, mental health, your past. Lately, though, some folks feel like you're leaning into the drama, maybe even exploiting it." There was a full second of silence, thick and dangerous. Lady Gaga blinked slowly, as if she needed a moment to decide whether she had heard that correctly. Joy muttered under her breath, "Oh boy." But her mic caught it, sending a ripple of laughter and tension across the audience. Gaga's fingers tightened around the armrest so hard her knuckles whitened. She leaned in. "Exploiting it? You think that's what this is?" Whoopi raised one brow, calm, unshaken. "I'm just asking what people are asking." Gaga's voice lowered, gaining an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "People may ask that. But you, Whoopi, you know better." There it was. The first crack of lightning. A smatter of gasps erupted from the front row. Sunny's eyes widened. Sarah held her breath. Whoopi didn't flinch. "Look, Gaga, we all know you've been through things." "No," Gaga interrupted, her voice trembling not with fear, but with fury. "No, you don't know. You think you know." The room shifted. It felt like the air thickened, pulling the audience closer, almost forcing them forward in their seats. Gaga continued, "I've talked about trauma. I've talked about being assaulted. I've talked about chronic pain. I've talked about losing myself. And every time I open up, someone like you, someone with a platform, turns it into a spectacle." Whoopi inhaled, preparing to speak, but Gaga kept going, her eyes glistening like a storm waiting to break. "You want to know why people think I'm exploiting my pain? Because shows like this twist it. Headlines twist it. And suddenly it's a game. A storyline. A punchline." The audience went dead silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Sunny folded her hands tightly, watching the exchange like she was witnessing a controlled explosion. Not sure yet if it would remain controlled. Whoopi leaned back, crossing her arms. "Gaga, nobody is trying to turn your pain into entertainment. But when you put yourself out there, you think I want to put myself out there like this?" Gaga snapped. "Do you know what it feels like to wake up one day and realize the world thinks they own your trauma?" Her voice cracked, not in weakness but in sheer emotional intensity. Whoopi replied carefully. "What I'm saying is, when you talk publicly, you invite questions. And you think that gives you the right to question the legitimacy of what I've lived." Gaga shot back. Sarah Haynes finally jumped in, her voice shaking. "Maybe we should." "No, let her talk," Whoopi said, raising a hand. Her tone was firm, but her eyes flickered with something more complicated. Maybe irritation. Maybe guilt. Maybe the realization that she had struck a nerve too deep to retreat from. Gaga's eyes locked onto hers. "I'm tired, Whoopi. I'm tired of being dissected. I'm tired of people acting like they know what I've been through." Joy Behar swallowed hard, leaning into her mic. "Gaga, honey, nobody's saying they know better." But Gaga didn't break focus. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but somehow it echoed louder than anything said before. "You have no idea what I've been through." The words fell like a thunderclap. Someone in the back row gasped aloud. A camera operator froze mid-movement. Even Whoopi's confident posture faltered for a second. The silence that followed was devastating. Then Gaga continued, her voice raw. You have no idea what it's like to carry memories that haunt you. To fight through pain every single day just to function. To live under a microscope where every tear you cry becomes a trending topic. Her hand lifted, trembling slightly. So don't sit there and imply I'm using my trauma for attention. I survived it. And I'm still surviving it. Whoopi held her gaze, her expression unreadable. Gaga, that's not what I meant. Then say what you meant, Gaga challenged. The tension snapped taut again, the audience hanging on to every breath. Joy whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. Sunny mouthed to a producer off camera. We need a break, but no one dared cut the moment. It was too big, too raw, too electric. Gaga pulled in a deep breath, steadying herself, though her chest rose and fell like she was fighting back a storm. It's easy to look at me and see a persona, she said. But I'm a person. And people forget that. You forget that. Whoopi's jaw tightened. I don't forget you're a person. Then why talk to me like a headline? Gaga fired back. And right there, the air shifted again. Something was coming. Something explosive. Something irreversible. But before it could break, the studio lights flickered, signaling the producer's desperate attempt to transition to commercial, too late. The confrontation had already ignited. And everyone watching knew. This was only the beginning. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the producers scrambled behind the scenes, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let the moment burn. But the cameras were still rolling, still locked, still drinking in every tremor in the air. And Lady Gaga, she wasn't done. She sat back slowly, her breath heavy, her fingers trembling only at the edges, like the aftershocks of an earthquake still rippling through her body. The audience watched, frozen between awe and fear, as if the entire room were trapped in the gravity of her pain. Whoopi adjusted her glasses. Her posture stiffened, then softened. She looked at Gaga not as a host, not as a commentator, but as a woman caught in the blast radius of a truth she hadn't expected to hear today. All right, she said carefully. Let's take this step by step. But Gaga shook her head. No, we're not doing steps. Not today. Sarah Haynes' eyes darted to the camera, then to Gaga. Maybe we should catch a breather, she whispered. Just to, reset the energy. Gaga's gaze didn't budge. The energy doesn't need resetting. It needs honesty. A hush rolled through the studio. Heavy, fragile. Whoopi inhaled deeply. The tension had settled not just between them, but across the entire set, crawling into every corner like smoke. Gaga, listen, she began. Nobody is dismissing what you've gone through. You've been open, brave. Brave? Gaga interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was hollow. Do you know what bravery looks like? It's waking up and choosing to live when all your body wants to do is shut down. The words hit the audience like a cold wave. A woman in the third row covered her mouth. A young man leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked. Gaga continued, her voice tightening. People think it's bravery to talk about trauma on a talk show. That's not bravery, Whoopi. That's survival. That's me trying to reclaim parts of myself I didn't even know were taken. Whoopi folded her hands. Her voice softened. No one here wants to take anything from you. Gaga shook her head again. But you did. The second you implied I'm leaning into drama, you took away the legitimacy of everything I've been through. You took my scars and turned them into entertainment. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, stepping into the crossfire with careful precision. Gaga, I think what Whoopi is trying to say. I know what she said, Gaga snapped, but then her tone softened toward Sunny. And I know she didn't mean it maliciously. I'm not saying she's the villain. I'm saying the conversation is. Whoopi blinked, stunned by the distinction. For a moment, just a moment, her defenses lowered. Joy Behar finally spoke again, her voice low and almost pleading. Gaga, sweetie, nobody in America thinks your trauma is a joke. That's the problem, Gaga said, her voice rising. America doesn't think it's a joke. They think it's content. They think my pain is theirs to dissect, to judge, to repurpose for their narratives. The audience murmured softly. They weren't restless. They weren't bored. They were shaken. Sarah exhaled slowly. I didn't expect today to go here. Gaga turned to her, eyes softening. Neither did I. Then she turned back to Whoopi. And the temperature dropped again. Whoopi, she said quietly, when you asked that question, it hit something in me I thought I had buried. Whoopi leaned forward, elbows on the table, the broadcaster mask slipping from her face. Which part? That word. Gaga swallowed. Exploiting. The audience stiffened. Gaga's voice trembled, this time with something more vulnerable than anger, fear. Do you know how often I ask myself that? In the dark. Alone. Wondering if speaking my truth has turned into some spectacle I never intended. Her eyes glassed over. I question myself every time I open my mouth about what happened to me. I wonder if people think I'm lying, or exaggerating, or seeking attention. She looked down, her voice cracking. That question eats me alive. And for the first time, Whoopi's expression shifted. Her shoulders slumped. Her eyes softened. She hadn't expected this. Not the rawness, not the confession, not the admission that the very insecurity she had poked at was something Gaga already fought internally. Gaga, Whoopi said gently, I'm sorry. I didn't know it cut that deep. It always cuts that deep, Gaga whispered. Every time someone doubts my story, it feels like I'm reliving it. Sunny's eyes glistened. Joy reached out as if to put a hand on Gaga's shoulder, but hesitated, unsure whether physical comfort would be welcome or intrusive. Gaga took a shaky breath. People think trauma ends when you talk about it. But it doesn't. It just becomes audible. Whoopi looked down at her cards, then pushed them aside entirely. The moment was too real, too raw for scripted segments or pre-planned topics. Gaga, she said softly, I didn't mean to question your truth. But you did, Gaga said, though the edge in her voice was dulling. And when you did, it felt like every person who ever dismissed me was sitting in your seat. The words hit hard. Whoopi closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing them. The audience was silent. No shifting seats. No whispered reactions. Silence so complete it felt like time itself was holding its breath. Finally, Whoopi nodded. You're right to call me out. Gaga's brows lifted slightly in surprise. Whoopi continued. Sometimes I ask tough questions because that's my job. But sometimes the job gets in the way of remembering the human being sitting across from me. There was no sarcasm in her tone. No defensive bite. Just sincerity. Gaga took this in carefully. Her shoulders eased, only a little, but enough to shift the energy. Sarah spoke gently. This is an emotional conversation. But it's an important one. The audience applauded softly. Not cheers, not hollers. Gentle recognition of the vulnerability unfolding. But the reprieve lasted only moments. Because suddenly a voice from the audience shouted, We love you, Gaga. Gaga looked up, and for a split second, a small, fragile smile tugged at her lips. But then the aftermath of the confrontation, the adrenaline, flooded back hard. She turned to Whoopi once more. You hurt me today, she said. I need you to understand that. Whoopi nodded again. I hear you. Gaga exhaled, long and heavy. Good. Because I'm not done. Gasps echoed across the room. This wasn't over. Not even close. The studio wasn't just tense anymore. It was electric. Every cable under the desk, every light overhead, every breath in the audience seemed to hum with anticipation. Gaga wasn't simply reacting now. She was unraveling layer after layer of something she had kept buried for years, maybe decades, and the world was watching her do it in real time. She straightened in her seat, brushed a loose strand of platinum hair behind her ear, and looked directly at Whoopi. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with a truth that weighed heavily between them. You know, Gaga said quietly, there was a time when I couldn't speak about any of this. I couldn't even say the words out loud. I felt like my voice didn't belong to me anymore. Like the world had taken it, twisted it, and handed it back broken. The audience listened without moving. Gaga's voice softened further. Do you know why I talk about trauma? Why I share it publicly? It's not for headlines. It's because someone out there, someone watching right now, feels like their voice doesn't belong to them either. Sunny nodded gently. And your voice helps people, she said. Gaga glanced at her appreciatively, but just as quickly, her gaze snapped back to Whoopi. But every time someone questions my motives, it makes me think twice. It makes me wonder if talking about it was a mistake. Whoopi sighed, leaning closer. Look, I asked the question because people out there. I'm not talking about people out there, Gaga interrupted. I'm talking about you. You're someone I respected. Someone I admired. And hearing that from you, on this stage, hurt deeper than all the tabloid garbage in the world. Whoopi didn't respond immediately. The weight of Gaga's words landed like bricks in her lap. She looked down, then back up, meeting Gaga's eyes with something that almost looked like regret. Sunny broke the silence. Gaga, when you say that question triggered something deeper. Can you tell us what you mean? Gaga hesitated. For a moment her eyes darted away, as if she were deciding just how much of herself she was willing to expose under the unforgiving glow of the studio lights. Then she inhaled sharply, painfully. There were people, Gaga said finally, people I trusted, who didn't believe me when I told them what happened. The studio froze. I lost friends. I lost family. I lost parts of myself because people didn't think I looked traumatized. Because I still performed. Because I still smiled. Because I still got up on stage in a costume and gave everything I had. Her voice cracked. And you know what they said? The same thing you said today. That maybe I was using it. That maybe it wasn't as bad as I claimed. Her lower lip trembled, but she held her composure like it was her last shield. That question wasn't new, she whispered. It was a ghost from my past. The audience gasped softly, the realization settling in that this wasn't just a heated moment. It was a trigger. A crack in armor Gaga had built over years of surviving. Joy Behar, who had been uncharacteristically silent, leaned forward, her voice trembling. Gaga, I am so sorry that happened to you. Nobody should ever have to go through that. Gaga blinked slowly, absorbing the sympathy, but she wasn't done. In fact, something in her seemed to ignite again. Anger, yes, but also conviction. You want to know why I talk about pain? She asked, turning to the audience now. Because silence almost killed me. Because pretending it never happened didn't heal anything. It just made me feel invisible. Her voice grew stronger, rising like a wave gathering force. And I know, right now, someone watching this is sitting alone, thinking their pain isn't valid because people don't believe them. That they should keep quiet. That their truth doesn't matter. A woman in the front row began to tear up. Gaga leaned into the mic, her voice soft but resonating with fierce clarity. I talk about my trauma so they know they're not alone. I talk about it so they feel seen. If that makes people uncomfortable, good. Healing isn't comfortable. Whoopi exhaled, long and heavy. Gaga, I respect that. And I respect you. I wasn't trying to minimize your experience. But you did, Gaga replied. Even if you didn't mean to. Whoopi nodded slowly. I hear you. Gaga held her gaze for a long, intense moment. The kind of moment where two people aren't speaking, but 1,000 emotions pass silently between them. Then Gaga leaned back, wiping under her eye briefly, though no tears had fallen. She wasn't breaking down. She was fighting. Sarah Haynes cleared her throat gently. Gaga, you said earlier that you're not done. What else do you want to say? Gaga paused. A deep, steady breath expanded her chest, then deflated slowly. I want to say, she began, that I'm tired of feeling like my pain needs permission to be real. I want to say that I don't owe anyone proof. Not you. Not the public. Not the media. Her voice sharpened. And I especially don't owe anyone a polite response when they imply my trauma is some kind of performance. The audience erupted in a wave of applause, loud, raw, emotional. Gaga let the applause run its course before lowering her voice again. But I also want to say something to you, Whoopi. The applause faded. Whoopi's eyes rose. Braced. You're one of the few people in this industry who knows what it's like to be scrutinized for every word you say. To have your intentions ripped apart. To have people decide who you are before you even open your mouth. Whoopi's expression softened deeply. Gaga continued. That's why your words mattered today. They cut deeper because I know you know better. Silence. Gaga leaned in, her voice gentle but firm. So let me ask you this. Why did you choose that question? Today, with everything going on. Whoopi hesitated. Then she spoke. Because I wanted to have an honest conversation. And I misjudged how deep that question would hit. Gaga nodded slowly, then said, Honesty goes both ways. The tension shifted again, no longer explosive but fragile. Emotional. Raw. Something was breaking open in Whoopi now too. But before she could respond, Gaga added, And I'm not finished. The audience gasped again, louder this time. Sarah's mouth fell open. Sunny froze. Joy muttered, Oh God. Gaga leaned forward, voice low and intense. There's something I haven't said yet. Something I've never talked about on television. The room went still. Completely still. Whatever she was about to reveal. It would change everything. The silence in the studio stretched so long it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Gaga's last words hovered in the air. Heavy, trembling, and charged with something so personal that even the cameras seemed to zoom in slowly, as if afraid to miss whatever came next. Whoopi's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear. Not in defensiveness. But in recognition that Gaga was standing at the edge of something monumental. and she was about to step off. Gaga inhaled, steady but trembling at the edges. "I've never said this publicly," she whispered, "because every time I tried, I backed out. I thought the world would twist it, or judge me, or tell me I was imagining things." Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the weight of memory. "When I went through what I went through, the people who should have protected me didn't." A collective gasp rippled through the studio audience. Gaga continued, voice low but unwavering. "And the person who hurt me wasn't just someone random. It was someone I trusted, someone I loved, someone who knew the darkest parts of me and used them against me." The room felt suspended, frozen mid-heartbeat. Whoopi held her breath. Sunny's hand flew to her chest. Joy looked down, eyes brimming. Sarah swallowed hard, visibly affected. Gaga blinked slowly, steadying herself. "I've carried that for years. I built my career on top of that pain. I performed with it. I traveled with it. I slept with it. And every time people asked me to speak, I wanted to scream. I'm doing my best to stay alive. Isn't that enough?" The audience erupted into applause, raw, emotional, as though they were applauding not just her words, but her survival. Gaga lifted her hand for silence, not dramatically, but gently, asking them to hold the moment with her. "I don't tell this story for pity," she said. "I don't share it for shock value. I share it because someone watching, a woman or a man, or someone who doesn't even know who they are yet, is drowning in shame. And I want them to know that shame isn't theirs to carry." Her eyes shone with unshed tears. "The person who hurt you is the one who should feel ashamed, not you." A man in the front row wiped tears from his face. A teenage girl clutched her mother's hand. Even the crew behind the cameras shifted, visibly emotional. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, voice trembling. "Gaga, thank you for trusting us with that. Truly." Gaga nodded softly. "I didn't plan to, but sometimes the truth demands to be spoken." She turned slowly toward Whoopi. The tension between them no longer felt explosive. It felt intimate. Heavy. Honest. "Whoopi," Gaga said gently, "I didn't come here to fight you. But when you asked that question, it pushed me back into a place I've spent years climbing out of." Whoopi swallowed, her voice quieter than it had been all show. "Gaga, I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted to bring you pain. I got too comfortable asking the tough questions and forgot that real people sit in those chairs." Gaga nodded, accepting the apology, but not letting the conversation end there. "But you must understand something," she said softly. "When public figures talk about trauma, it doesn't mean they're exploiting it. It means they've decided their truth matters more than their silence." Whoopi exhaled deeply. "You're right, and I appreciate you saying this. I needed to hear it." A sense of release rippled between them. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but respect born from fire. Sarah, sensing the shifting tide, leaned in with a cautious smile. "This may be one of the most powerful moments we've ever had on this show." Joy nodded. "No kidding," Sunny added, "and I hope people watching realize that conversations like this are why women, and survivors, need safe spaces to speak." Gaga breathed out slowly, almost in relief, then turned her gaze to the audience, not just in the studio, but beyond the lens, to the millions who would watch this moment on television, on social media, in clips that would go viral before the show even ended. "Before we wrap," she said, "I want to say something to the survivors watching." The studio fell silent again, reverent. "You are not defined by what someone did to you," Gaga said, each word deliberate. "You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not too much. And you don't owe anyone your pain in a digestible format." Her hands trembled slightly on the table, but her voice remained firm. "Your story belongs to you. Not to them. Not to the world. To you." The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, one that grew and grew until it turned into an echoing roar that filled the entire set. Whoopi looked around, humbled. Joy blinked rapidly to hide tears. Sarah placed a hand over her heart. Sunny wiped her cheek discreetly. Gaga whispered, "Thank you," but it was lost beneath the ocean of applause. Finally, Whoopi raised her hand to calm the room. And when the applause faded, she turned to Gaga with genuine, solemn respect. "I'm grateful you said what you said today," Whoopi said. "And I'm sorry for where I misstepped. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation, even if it was tough." Gaga nodded softly. Tough conversations can still be meaningful ones. They exchanged a faint, fragile smile. Not a perfect ending, not a full resolution, but the kind of human moment that only comes from two people facing each other with truth bared. The camera slowly zoomed in on Gaga for the final beat. She looked directly into the lens, her voice softer now, gentle, but powerful enough to reach through the screen. And to everyone watching, if my story touched you, or made you think, or made you feel less alone, don't stay silent. Use your voice. Speak your truth. And don't let anyone tell you your pain isn't real. The audience applauded again, lighter this time, warm, supportive. And as the music swelled, the credits ready to roll, the narrator's voice, your channel's voice, would end the video with a cinematic final beat. If this moment moved you, if this confrontation opened your eyes or touched your heart, tell us your thoughts in the comments below. How did you feel watching Lady Gaga stand in her truth today? And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Talk Flair, and turn on notifications for more powerful, dramatic, and emotional stories just like this one. Fade out. End.